GM was the most powerful company in the world for 77 consecutive years until one recession exposed the only thing that revenue can never fix, a business that can only survive when everything goes right. So in 2024, we watched it happen again. Thousands of businesses with strong revenue, growing teams, recognizable names, they couldn't survive a slow month. Not a bad year, not a crisis, but a slow month. Because it was never the month that actually killed them. It was what the month actually exposed. A load-bearing business, one that needs the team, the overhead, the spend, the momentum, all of it running perfectly just to stay alive. But that's not a business. That's a ticking time bomb. And most founders don't even realize that they're sitting on one. So today, I'm going to show you the architecture behind what makes a business profitable by design. So you can double your profit this year and stop trading your life for your revenue. This is the high profit model. Now, welcome back. I'm Echeverria, and I help founders and CEOs become category leaders by turning their expertise into a self-selling IP system using the Netflix effect. Now, last week, we talked about what I call the innovator's operating system, that internal engine that lets you think differently, decide faster, and lead instead of follow. Now, this is the foundation that allows you to innovate and scale. But here's the thing. Thinking like an innovator is only half of the equation, because you can have the sharpest mind in the room and still be running a load-bearing business that's quietly bleeding profit and time. So today, we're going to take it one layer deeper. We're going to talk about where your innovation asset actually lives inside of your business operations and how to actually build it so profit isn't something you hope for at the end of the month. It's something that your business was designed and engineered to produce. This is what I call the high profit model. Now, this continues on our Innovation Assets in Action series, where we're taking everything we've built to show you exactly how it works inside of a real and sustainable business. So let's get real. There are two ways to build a service business. The first one is to take the path that most founders take, where you can grow by adding more people, more tools, more overhead. But every new client is going to cost you something. Every new hire will add weight, and every new tool is going to need managing. Now, this is where input equals output. The business gets bigger and heavier at the same time, which means every time you grow, you're going to pay for it. That's what a load-bearing structure that's going to get more expensive as it continues to grow. Now, the second road is going to look completely different. You're going to build a business that grows without getting heavier, where every next stage of growth doesn't require more of you in order to get there, more of your time, more of your energy, more of your money. It's a business that's going to operate as its own entity, not dependent on your personality or your presence or your hustle. It runs lean by design, and profit isn't what's going to get left over after expenses. It's what the business was actually built to produce. So a slow month doesn't threaten everything you've built, or a week off doesn't mean that everything falls apart. Growth doesn't come with a personal price tag. And the truth behind this is it's not a fantasy, it's architecture. And businesses that have this figured out are just built differently. Let me show you what I mean. Now, right now, whether you walk into a McDonald's in Akron, Ohio or Tokyo, Japan, you know exactly what to expect. The burger, the fries, the McDonald's experience. Now, that's not by accident. It's actually how it was built by design. Ray Kroc didn't sit there and just create restaurants. He created operating systems. To be exact, it's called the Speedy Service System. Now, this is a system where every station, every process, every decision was actually standardized and baked into the architecture so that it didn't matter who walked through the door to work that day. Now, a first day employee could run a station so effectively, not because they had the talent, but because the system told them exactly what to do, when to do, and how to do it. Now, the quality was no longer going to be dependent on the chef. The customer service experience wasn't dependent on the manager, and the business didn't need Kroc in the building to run the way it was designed to run. His genius wasn't in the kitchen. It was in the blueprint behind it. Now, that blueprint is now running 40,000 locations in over 100 countries, producing the same results regardless of who's in it. Now, that's not because McDonald's is great at hiring. It's because the system runs regardless of who's in it. People don't run it. They amplify it. Now, Toyota understood this too. In the 1970s and 80s, nobody would have looked at the American auto industry and seen a problem. The titans of industry were GM, Ford, Chrysler. They were all bigger than Toyota. They had the factories, the workers, the revenue, and by every traditional metric, they were the ones who were winning, but their model was really bloated by design. So growth meant that they had to add more people, more cars, more things that they had to manage. So every dollar of growth was going to cost more than the last. And input equaled output. So every time they grew, they knew that they were going to have to pay for it. So when the market turned and things started to slow down, the weight of everything they built had nowhere to go and their cost structure just couldn't flex. So their overhead was so high, it left very little room for them to be able to move. And the weight of carrying that bloated business started to crack. So GM actually needed a government bailout. Ford needed an emergency restructuring, and Chrysler nearly disappeared. But Toyota didn't need saving because Toyota had spent decades building something different that their competitors had never even thought of. An operating system that was designed to never have to carry the weight that it hadn't earned. So there was no bloat, no guessing, no spending money on hoping that the results would follow. So every input had a guaranteed output. When things started to slow down, their cost structure slowed with it. And when things were uncertain, the system didn't panic because it was never built to depend on everything needing to go right. That's not luck. That's the architecture the company built into it. So while those are two different companies in two different industries, they all have one single pattern. The businesses that are going to survive and thrive and win didn't have better people. They had better architecture. So, regardless of what the market does or who shows up for work that day, whether this is a good month or a slow one, that is what actually allows you to grow. That's the difference between a load bearing business and a systems led one. One road will continue to get heavier every time you grow, the other will get stronger. So, your business right now is on one of those two roads. The question is, which one? Now, I want to rewind for a second because before you can actually answer that question, you need to understand why this is actually happening in the first place. Now, you didn't sit here and build a business just to try and stay busy. You built it because you understood a real opportunity in the market, one where you could do something that was truly life changing for your clients, but also create life changing income for you and your family. You wanted a business that makes real money without costing you everything just to run it. A business where you can actually step away for a week without having to come back to some sort of crisis, where you can look back 5, 10, even 20 years from now and have something to show for all the hard work that you've put into it. Now, somewhere along the line, your business started to demand more of you than it actually was returning. So, more to energy, more time, more money just to try and keep it running. So instead of the business working for you, you started to work for it. So what happens next? You do what every founder does when things start to get heavy. You add it. So a new client comes in, you hire someone else to handle it. You hit a bottleneck, you add a tool. The revenue plateaus and you launch something new. So every single one of those decisions makes sense in the moment. But here's the thing that you don't really realize. Every time you add something without having a central system that connects it, you're not building, you're stacking. I want you to think about it this way. When things shifted and streaming services were came out, we all left cable thinking, finally, no more paying for 300 channels we never watched or being locked into a package that doesn't work for me. We thought streaming services meant freedom. So we added Netflix and it made sense. Then Hulu for next day episodes and live TV, HBO for the exclusive shows, Disney Plus because kids, Apple TV because it came with the phone. And then we sat back feeling like we'd finally figured it out until the bill came and we realized we were paying more than cable for services that don't actually talk to each other, that overlap in ways that we never use. So while we added each one by one, we never stopped to ask, does this actually work as a system? So we didn't end up building better solutions with streaming services. We just stacked options. Now in business, that stacking has a name and I call it structural debt. It's what builds up every time you add something inside of your business, whether that's a person, a tool, an offer, without actually having a central system that you're plugging it into. Now, it doesn't feel like debt when you're taking it on because it feels like progress for you. But just like financial debt, it starts to compound. So every addition that doesn't connect to a core becomes a liability in your business. Every month that it's sitting there, it's going to cost you more than it actually returns. And the scariest part about it is that it's completely invisible until it isn't. So a load bearing business doesn't announce itself. It's just quietly getting heavier until one slow month pulls back the curtain. And that's where the businesses start to bleed. So it's not this giant wound that we get. It's from 1,000 small ones. It's in the 11 p.m. Slack messages that you can't ignore because nobody else can make that call, or the team member who's been with you for 2 years and still can't run a project without you or your manager in it. And it's the month that you hit a record breaking revenue month, but still feel really behind, or looking at your bank account after a $40,000 month and wondering where it actually all went. It's that vacation that you haven't taken because the last time you tried to do that, you spent half of it on your phone. Now, that's not a cash flow problem. That's not a team problem. It's not even a marketing problem. That's what it feels like when you become the operating system, when the whole thing runs on your time, your energy, your decisions, and your presence. Now, the brutal truth behind that is you can't scale it. You can only survive it. So you can do that until you can't. Now, from the outside, nobody else is going to see it. They're going to see the revenue numbers, the recognizable name, the full calendar, and they're going to see success. And so do you, which is exactly why this becomes so dangerous because you're not going to fix a problem that you can't see. The problem doesn't announce itself, it's just sitting there quietly compounding. So every month you watch your margin get a little bit thinner, and every month that load starts to get a little bit heavier until the gap between what you're making and what you're keeping is going to get wider and wider. And you're going to keep pushing through it because, of course, if you get the right person or the right tool or the right strategy, you believe that it's going to start to feel easier, but it doesn't. Now, the reason this happens is because you're not solving the right problem. You've been treating this like it's a revenue problem, but it's always been a structure problem. So no matter what, revenue isn't going to fix a load bearing business. It's only going to make it more expensive to maintain. That's why the answer to scaling sustainably isn't adding more to scale your revenue. It's building a high profit architecture that grows without getting heavier. So you're keeping more of what you're making and your output will scale without being dependent on constant increase in input. So let me show you what I mean. Now, I had a client who came to me. She was running a 7-figure business, a well-known name in the relationship space, been on TV, written a book, had thousands of clients. Now, again, every metric that we had, she was winning, but behind the scenes, she was drowning. She had a team of 15 people, tens of thousands of dollars a month in ad spend, constantly launching new offers every time her revenue started to dip because she was trying to outrun the bleeding. Now, she was staring at a drained bank account, kids who barely saw her, a husband who was begging her to take a vacation. So, yeah, she looked successful because she had built a textbook load bearing business. And what happens with that is the physical, monetary, and mental load that comes with scaling without architecture becomes really freaking heavy. So when we actually sat down together, we didn't talk about how that she could actually make more. We tore the business apart and looked at what was working, what wasn't, where was the time, money, and energy, and where those things were actually going. So what we found was that it wasn't a revenue problem, it was a structure problem. So the first month we cut $31,000 in expenses, removed the bloated team that wasn't producing ROI, cut ad spend in half, and for the first time in years, she could breathe. There was no more stressing about payroll, no more rushing to launch something new just to try and keep the lights on. So the next month, we built and optimized her 5 core systems, her brand innovation, marketing, sales, delivery, and operations. Now, this time, we built everything around one central asset, her innovation operating system. So everything had a place, a job, an ROI that it was actually working towards. We could measure it, validate it, cut what wasn't working or earning its place. So instead of juggling 7 offers, we ended up focusing on 3. And instead of throwing money at an ads team that hadn't brought in clients in months, we took it in-house and had a VA who managed the entire thing. She was no longer sitting there just running a business anymore. She was leading one. So she understood the function and directive of every system inside of her business. And she had this operating system that was directing everything within her business and it ran those core systems. So she never had to question what was going to happen next. She could build this lean, effective, and highly profitable business that didn't weigh on her. Now, 4 months later, she was able to triple her profit, take a 3-week-long vacation to Europe, and now she spent every afternoon with her kids without a single worry about what was happening back at the office. Now, that transformation didn't happen because she was working harder. It happened because she replaced a load-bearing structure with a high-profit one. Now, it does not matter if you're sitting here right now and you're working towards $100,000 or $10 million. A load-bearing business is going to hit the same wall, just at different speeds. So it's not about a bigger business. It's about a better built one. I call this the high-profit model, and it's the architecture behind businesses that are going to grow without getting heavier and output's going to scale without requiring constant increase in input. So every high profit business, regardless of the industry, is going to follow the exact same structure. There are 3 components behind it, and the first one is the innovation asset. This is the center of it. There's 5 compounding systems that are then going to be built around that and created as a way to be able to do that. Now, the third and final piece is actually creating a process where your people are positioned as amplifiers. They're not going to be the operators. So let's break down the first component of the high profit model, which is something we've already talked about on this podcast, your innovation asset. Now, if you've listened to that episode, you know that this isn't your offer because most founders hear asset. Their brain is going to go straight to an offer, content, brand, maybe your team. That's not what I mean. An innovation asset isn't what you sell, it's the underlying mechanism that makes what you sell work. It's that proprietary methodology, the repeatable system, the intellectual property that's going to make your work innovative, defensible, and scalable. Now, today, we're going to look at this from a different lens. So, not as a positioning tool, but as a business architecture. Because in high profit businesses, the innovation asset isn't just something you talk about, it's actually something that your business runs on. This is the shift that a lot of business owners never make. They build an innovation asset for marketing, but they never actually know how to install it operationally. So it lives inside of the messaging, the business, but it's still having your business run on personality, decisions, and improvisation. Now, in a high profit business, the innovation asset is going to become that central operating architecture. It's what marketing communicates, it's what sales demonstrates, what delivery executes, and what operations is going to protect. So every system plugs into the same mechanism. Instead of having 5 different departments requiring constant coordination, you have 5 expressions of one central asset. So your coordination becomes structural instead of cognitive. Without this, you become the place that integration happens. You're the one translating between marketing and delivery, explaining decisions, connecting dots, holding context that nobody else has. And it's why founders say things like, nothing moves unless I'm in it, or my team is great, or I just need someone who thinks like me. That's not a talent problem, it's an architecture problem. So I want you to think about it like an NFL playbook, okay? The head coach himself does not run every play. He built a complete system with decisions, scenarios, responses, so the team can execute in real time without him actually needing to be on the field. So when a new player joins, they don't learn by shadowing the coach. They learn by understanding the playbook. Now, they can actually go through and know how every player thinks, moves, responds. The coach's genius isn't on the field. It's inside of that architecture. And if you remove that playbook, the team is going to improvise. But when you install the playbook, the team is going to execute. And that's what your innovation asset actually does when it becomes the core of your business. Your team is no longer going to guess. It's going to start executing, and your delivery stops depending on your presence and starts running on your architecture. So you stop being the load-bearing wall and become the architect. So here's a test that you can run inside of your business right now. If you ask your team, how do we create results for our client? If everyone answers differently, you don't have a core yet. If everyone gives the same answer, you have an innovation asset that's installed. That is what we are building towards. So once that innovation asset exists at the center, the next question becomes, how do we actually run that, install it in the rest of the business so that we can organize everything around it? Now, this is where most founders think that they already have it all figured out because they have the team, the systems, the tools. But here's the difference. Having systems isn't the same thing as having an ecosystem. So most businesses are running 5 independent operations that happen to share the same bank account. So marketing does its thing, sales does its thing, delivery does its thing, and the founder spends half the time being the translator between all of them. We see this happen all the time inside of corporate businesses as well. When I worked in corporate, we watched marketing, sales, operations, engineering, all of these departments worked as silos. And it meant that the company wasn't running effectively or efficiently. And that's when they bring in consultants and say, how do we work better? Because right now we're bleeding money, time, energy on trying to get all of these different departments just trying to work together. That's 5 separate jobs, right? With one person that's probably holding them together, or maybe a group of people. Now, in a high profit business, the 5 core systems are brand innovation, marketing, sales, delivery, and operations. They are not going to operate independently. They're all expressions of the same central asset. That means, think about again, in a corporation, that means all of the different departments are working towards the same goal with the same concepts and know how to take the same core operating system, but apply it in their own individual ways. So when they're built that way, something completely changes. Instead of having efforts that are just kind of operating individually, they start to compound. Every piece of content marketing is going to create and feed sales. Every sales conversation is going to inform delivery, and every delivery outcome strengthens the brand, and every operational process protects the margin. Everything's working together, nothing's wasted, everything connects, and the output grows without a proportional increase in input. So think about it kind of like a rowing team. If you had 8 athletes with 8 sets of oars and 8 individual efforts, when every rower is pulling at their own pace and their own rhythm, the boat is going to wobble. Energy is getting wasted. The crew's working a lot harder than they should for how little the boat is actually moving. Now, instead, when every rower is synchronized like they do, they're pulling at the same same time, in the same sequence. They're driven by the same rhythm. That boat is going to move way faster with less effort from each individual. Now, the same people and the same oars, but we're creating a completely different output. That's what holistic and compounding means in a high profit business. The systems aren't working harder, they're working together. Now, here's the thing. There's a third piece of the puzzle that most founders are going to resist, which is what I call lean by design. Because lean doesn't mean small. It means that nothing in your business earns a seat at the table unless it has a job, a place, or an ROI that it's working towards. So whether that's a hire, a tool, an offer, an expense, if it doesn't connect to the core and compound with the system, then it becomes structural debt. And structural debt, as we already talked about earlier, is the silent killer of profit. So this is exactly what we did with my client in the relationship space. We didn't add more systems. We rebuilt the ones that she already had, and then we built it all around the core central asset. We cut what wasn't connecting, focused on what was, and for the first time, again, her business stopped requiring more input to create that output. I see this a lot with people who come in and start working together where we're cutting team, we're cutting systems, we're cutting offers, we're cutting ad spend because we acknowledge and realize that they weren't working together. They weren't compounding. And when we do this correctly, that everything starts to work together and more effectively and more efficiently, so we don't actually have to spend as much, whether that's time, team, energy, etc. So here's the test I want you to ask for yourself right now. Look at every tool, every team member, every offer in your business. Can you draw a direct line from each one of those to your innovation asset and create a measurable output? If your business is lean by design, that is what will happen. If you cannot do that, if you have all these different entities, different things inside of your business, then you are carrying structural debt. Okay, I'll tell you this in the simplest format. If you were sitting here and saying, Naz, we are marketing on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, we're doing all these different things, Pinterest, blogs, etc., but you can't connect those all back to a central core system and what each thing does, then I'm going to tell you this right now. You are operating with structural debt. Most people are doing things that don't actually create ROI in their business because it's not built around a central operating system. Okay, you need to understand that. Now, the third component behind a high profit model is understanding how you actually hire, how you lead, how you build your team forever. I promise you this is going to change everything about what you see because I'm going to teach you how to look at people as amplifiers. So they are no longer going to be your operating system. They're not the solution to every bottleneck. They become amplifiers. So here's the distinction I need you to understand. Most founders will sit and hire somebody to fill a gap. So something's not getting done correctly and they find someone else to do it. I don't want to run my ads. I don't know what I'm doing. I bring someone else on. Or, hey, I need someone else who handles the data and goes through things. I'm going to bring someone else on. I don't want to handle clients anymore. I'm going to bring someone else on. Okay. They don't know how to handle it. So instead, they bring someone else on to fill that gap. Now, that makes a lot of sense in the moment because it's exactly what we're taught to do. But when people are hired to fill gaps, instead of plugging into a system that's already effectively working, they become load bearing. Now, the business is no longer just going to be dependent upon you. It's going to be dependent upon someone else. So if you lose your head of sales, the pipeline's going to stall. If you lose your operations manager, the back end wobbles. If your VA is out for 2 weeks, things shift, right? You lose your delivery lead and client results are going to suffer. Every key person becomes a key single point of failure. I want you to hear that again. Every single person that you have now becomes a single point of failure. So the more that you grow, the more fragile things are going to get because you're not building this team, you're building a collection of load-bearing walls. So in a high-profit business, people don't run the system, they're going to extend it. Their job is not to hold the business together, it's to take what the system is already doing on its own and do more of it. So think about it kind of like electricity. The power grid isn't going to depend on a single appliance that's going to run it to function, right? The grid generates the power. The appliances then plug in and use it. So if you remove one appliance, the grid keeps running. And if you add 10 more, the grid doesn't strain. It just powers more. That's what your team should look like. An innovation asset is the grid. Your people are the appliances. They don't generate the power, they channel it. And when people are hired as amplifiers instead of load-bearing walls, everything will change because your onboarding gets faster. New hires know exactly how to learn the system, not have to go through you. Performance is going to become measurable because the system defines what good looks like. Losing a key team member becomes an inconvenience, but not a crisis. So scaling will stop meaning more people and starts meaning more output from the same architecture. This is the last thing that we rebuilt for my client because before her team was 15 people held together by her. She was the decision maker, the translator, the quality, she was all of that. Now, after she had a team of key players, each one of them had a defined role. They plugged directly into her innovation operating system. They didn't need her in the room. They needed the playbook that she had now built. And that's when she stopped running a business and actually was leading it. So here's the test. If your best team member left tomorrow, would the system survive? If yes, your people are now amplifiers. Now, if the answer is no, you have a load-bearing people business. And that's the difference between those two answers, is the difference between a business that's going to scale and a business that's going to be dependent on everything going right. So let's do a quick recap. The reason that most businesses stay stuck, working harder every year without getting lighter, isn't because of effort, it's because of architecture. So a load-bearing business will always cost you more than it returns. And that means that no amount of revenue is going to fix that. You are only going to create a more expensive business to maintain. Now, the high profit model changes all of that. The three components between that were the innovation asset that is the core, that central architecture that everything plugs into. It's not something you just talk about, it's what your business actually runs on. Then you have your systems that are holistic, compounding, and lean by design, those 5 expressions of one central asset where every input is going to earn its place and everything connects instead of fragments. And last but not least is that your people are going to become amplifiers, not load-bearing walls, but not the operating system, but a team that's going to extend what the architecture already does. When all 3 of those things are in place, your structural basis of profit becomes predictable and growth stops costing you everything. Now, the high profit model is the foundation, but it's only the foundation as inside of the equation, because building a business that doesn't carry weight, that it hasn't actually earned, is what makes you capable of scaling. So that's where we fill the business with high intent buyers who sell themselves before they ever get on a call with you. That's the easiest method. And it works in 3 steps, with the first one being winning the market. See, your best clients aren't looking for another version of what already exists. They're looking for the breakthrough that makes them say, this is exactly what I've been waiting for. Now, most founders position themselves as a better option. So not the only option, which means that they're forced into competition, comparison, and convincing. The first step in the easiest method is actually building out that innovation asset, where we're going to actually help you uncover and articulate the gap in your market that only your thinking fills. So this isn't louder messaging or prettier branding or tweaking of your offer. It's clarifying the innovation that actually is behind your work so clearly that buyers don't see you as one of many. They see you as the reference point. So when this happens, everything inside of the business changes, because you stop chasing attention, stop competing on price, and high intent buyers start recognizing your value immediately. That is how you win the market and how you become the standard that everyone else gets compared against. Now, the second piece of that is turning that into a bingeable decision system. Now, winning attention alone is just not enough. Your buyers need to move from interest to decision. Now, most sales processes are actually making this a lot harder than it needs to be by creating long nurture cycles, endless content, back and forth conversations, all because the system isn't actually designed to mirror how decisions actually happen. So people don't decide in fragments, they decide in immersion. Think about how Netflix works. When you sit down and watch an episode, you don't want to wait a week just to try and feel invested. So you binge. With every episode you watch, the story becomes clearer, the stakes get higher, and the decision to keep watching actually becomes automatic. Now, we're going to apply that same psychology to sales, and the bingeable decision system is actually a structured experience where buyers are going to move through your thinking in sequence. You're installing micro beliefs step by step until working with you feels like the only and obvious next move. So inside of our process, we do this by helping our clients build an audio or video series that quite literally mirrors the decision process and creates micro decisions. No more chasing, no convincing, no dragging people across the finish line, just a system that lets buyers sell themselves. Now, the third and final piece is what I call the happy client machine. This is where most people end up overlooking because it's the delivery system. High profit businesses don't just attract clients. They actually have to have a process that allows them to deliver results that are going to compound long term. That is the third part of the EZS method and what I call the happy client machine. So this is where your methodology becomes systematized into a delivery process that produces consistent outcomes without it needing to be dependent upon you or even anyone on your team. So clients are actually getting better results, staying longer, and they're referring others. So your reputation compounds instead of resetting every month. This is how businesses scale without burning out the founder. Because when you zoom out, the easiest method is doing something very simple, but very powerful. It turns your high profit architecture into a complete ecosystem. Your innovation asset wins the market. Your bingeable decision system converts the market. Your happy client machine compounds the market. And then obviously we apply that within your sales operations, etc. Now, when this is paired with a high profit model that we talked about and built today, you no longer run the business, you're leading it. So if this episode resonated with you, if you have walked away with realizing that you are tired of carrying a load bearing business and you want to start building one that actually is producing profit, the next step is actually to book a growth optimization call. On this, we are going to sit down, we're going to identify where your innovation points are, how we can actually apply this inside of a bingeable system, and how to identify where your business is load bearing and how we can actually build architecture that allows your business to continue to grow without getting heavier. So you can find that link in the show notes or head on over to easyesleads.com/call. But if you want to learn a little bit more about how we develop the EasyS method, how we leverage the Netflix effect so that we can turn your expertise into a self-selling system, you can head on over to easyesleads.com to check out our on-demand series where we break this all down. So if this episode has helped you walk away, think differently, I would love and appreciate if you take a quick moment to rate, subscribe, and share this episode with a founder who's building something that lasts, because the businesses that survive are not the ones with the most revenue. They're the ones that are built to hold it. So until next time, here's to keeping it real.